Good evening and welcome back to ParaGhoul Paranormal, Discoveries from the Dark, the radio show where we dive into the shadows of Saskatchewan and sometimes across Canada to see what secrets are within. I'm your host, K.D. Kulpa, and I'm a horror author and paranormal researcher based in Regina, Saskatchewan. Tonight we are going to be returning to a local Saskatchewan haunt. This particular haunted building is in Moose Jaw, for those that don't know it, and I think it is popular for not only its haunting, but also its food. So let me ask you, have you had lunch with the ghost of Minnie yet? Okay, so today we are going to be visiting the home that was originally owned by Edward Nicholas Hopkins and Minnie Latham. Except now it is more well known as the Hopkins Dining Parlour in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Chatting with those that work at the dining parlour makes it obvious that they are okay with the ghosts that wander the halls. They believe that even more ghosts have been added to the hauntings, as previous workers that love the building have been seen since their passing within the building. So, maybe some more of those ghosts that like to just pop in for a visit once in a while. Now, I was lucky enough to get a tour myself. I think it was back in 2022. My husband and I went and actually got to have a tour, as well as have some delicious lunch while we were there. So let's dig into this location. Before we get into the actual paranormal activity and the ghosts that, are said to haunt this building, let's first talk about the history of the building and the people that have lived in it. So this particular property was once a house that has been turned into a restaurant, as I said. It is a 2.5-story brick building that was built in 1905. And it has the classical revival style architecture, so it has like a veranda on it and some nice big windows. The name of the restaurant, as I said, comes from the first owner. So Edward Nicholas Hopkins, he first came to Moose Jaw in 1882 as one of its first residents. So he was actually born in Brownsville, which is in the Oxford County in Ontario, on October 3rd, 1854. He began his career as a cheesemaker, which I find incredibly interesting because I never really thought of people, deciding to start careers as a cheesemaker. But not only was he a cheesemaker, he quickly became a manager of actually 4 cheese factories in Ontario, which that's pretty impressive. Apparently, when he decided to finally venture out west, the train at that time could only reach as far as Brandon, Manitoba. If you've listened to any of my previous Saskatchewan Haunts episodes, then you know that 1882 was the year that the Canadian Pacific Railway was first entering Saskatchewan to continue its construction west. So that's why Regina kind of started around 1882 as well. So once he reached Brandon, apparently he and a group of people that he was traveling with all had to go on this major 6-week journey by oxen and wagon. Now this is according to a history piece I found that was conducted by Regina Sun on September 20th, 1992. And the article was done for the Moose Jaw Wild West Days, which I just absolutely love that title. According to their research, Hopkins arrived in Moose Jaw, or at least in what would become Moose Jaw, on July 21st, 1882. So the article goes on to say, the town site had not yet been surveyed, and the nearest post office was 200 miles away. In the tribulation of dry years from 1882 to 1885, Mr. Hopkins was considered the first to discover that the system of summer fallowing was the practical method to follow in Saskatchewan. So there you go. He was kind of behind some of the big agricultural history in Saskatchewan as well. So apparently he was also made president in multiple places. So in 1891, he became the president of the Dairymen's Association for the Northwest Territories, Remember, Saskatchewan was not a province until 1905. So he would later on also serve as president to the Grain Growers Association from 1906 to 1910. And then he was also the president of the Moose Jaw General Hospital from when it was first founded until Moose Jaw became a city. And that's not all. He was even elected for the House of Commons in Moose Jaw constituency in 1923. So a very busy guy in the community by the sounds of things. And what I found interesting is that he was also somehow involved in the Moose Jaw Wild Animal Park. So if you don't know, Moose Jaw had a bit of a zoo that opened up back in 1929. Now, it had both native to Saskatchewan animals, so, like our wolves, bears, bison, birds, but they also tried to bring in non-native animals, kind of importing them in. This apparently included animals even like lions at one point. Now, according to some historical articles, they were supposed to even get a hippo, but unfortunately, the poor hippo had to be euthanized en route because of some sort of injury that happened to it while it was being transported, which makes you sad. The park did close down finally in 1995, and now the lands are primarily used, at least from what I can tell, for people that are kind of going out for long, nature walks. Although I did find some things that said that they have also been used, for large festivals and things like that, but I don't know if they still do that because I've actually walked the area myself, including checking some of the very few abandoned buildings that are kind of still there. One of which was a bathroom that has since been destroyed because when you look inside of the doors, you can see it's quite destroyed. So I don't know if that they still use it for festival type things anymore, unless they use porta potties, but I don't know. Perhaps I'll put some pictures up on my website for those that want to check it out that kind of show you what it looks like now, as well as some of the pamphlets and things that I found and newspaper articles that I found on when it was open. But now, in January of 1890, let's kind of talk about Hopkins again. So he actually married Minnie Latham. So Minnie had been born in 1873 in Cheshire, England, and she had come to Moose Jaw with her parents in 1883. So about 10 years old. When I did search about kind of their family, at first I found mixed records, which made it kind of confusing to figure out, if they had children and how many children did they have. So as an example, in the Regina Morning Leader on April 11th, 1923, while he was involved in the election, it states that Hopkins was married to Miss Minnie Latham in Moose Jaw in 1890 and had 2 sons and 1 daughter. However, in an article on him that I found later, it stated he had only 1 son. Then in an article about his death, it stated he had 1 son and 1 daughter. So finally, I was actually able to find a Facebook group of all things. And the Facebook group is called Moose Jaw Days. So I believe it's all about, sharing, historical things, historical people that helped make Moose Jaw what it is today, and historical happenings, and people like to share these things. So anyway, someone had collected a bunch of articles and information on the history of the Hopkins family. So apparently, Edward and Minnie's first son, James Earl, had died suddenly at the age of 15 while swimming with friends in the Moose Jaw River in 1907. He had originally been born in 1891. So once I knew what to look for, I was actually able to find an article in the Morning Leader of Regina on June 22nd, 1907 that confirmed this. So after their first son's passing, they did have a second son, and he was Russell, who was born in 1908, from what I could tell. He would return to Ontario and become a professor at the Toronto University. And then they also did have a daughter, Marguerite, and she married a Moose Jaw man named Norman J. Bellamy. And she was born in 1895 and passed away in December of 1972, still in Moose Jaw. So in 1905, Hopkins built the house that is now known as the Hopkins Dining Parlour. And it would end up staying with the family for quite a few years, actually. In July of 1935, Hopkins himself passed away suddenly in his own home at the age of 80. They said he had been sick in the article in the newspaper, but it was still very sudden and unexpected when it actually happened. And then in January of 1943, so about 8 years later, Minnie would also pass away, also in the home, which might explain some of the activity when we get into that portion, because, back then people would have wakes in their home. So it's interesting that the ghost that they think is there also passed away in the home. But anyway, I digress. Let's continue talking about the history. So Marguerite would actually continue to hold the property in the Hopkins name until sometime in 1937. I kind of went through the Henderson directories. If you've never seen them, they're basically like address books to tell you who's living in what house. And according to that, it had the Hopkins name until 1937, I believe. And then it was listed as vacant in 1938 or 1939. I did kind of look at a couple more after that, and I noticed that it actually changed hands a lot, which kind of makes you wonder if some people were having some hauntings and didn't like being in the house. But I don't know. Who knows? Could be a lot of things, right? Anyway, however, in July 1978, the Wayne Pierce family actually took over. So this is the family that actually turned the house into a dining parlor as it is now, and named it after the original owner. So that is when it became the Hopkins Dining Parlour. So the Pierce family continued to offer food as well as even ghost tours of the building and talking about this ghost named Minnie. And they also offered things like medieval themed dinners a few times a year, apparently. The Pierce family owned the dining parlor for 40 years. Well, 41, I guess. Before they finally sold to the newest owners that took over in March of 2020. So during their early ownership, the Pierce family searched for items, antiques, collectibles, pictures, anything that could be related to Edward Hopkins or the Hopkins family. They wanted to bring back to be a part of the house so that they could have kind of that Victorian style dining parlor, which it is very cool. If you go inside, nowadays you still get to see all of these old antiques and like furniture from different parts of the history and pictures of these people. So it is really cool. But I mean, it was funny because walking through, when you're taking a camera through that has a flash, or you're taking video and they have these really, really, really old mirrors, and you always kind of think back to like, oh, haunted mirrors and those kinds of things. So it's funny because when I was taking pictures, there are a lot of weird like glares and a lot of weird reflections that I got in my pictures. But I really do believe it's just because it's old mirrors. I don't think it's anything paranormal. I think it's just the old mirrors. But anyway, it was interesting. It's a really cool place and you should definitely check it out. But now let's kind of get into the haunting side of things. Like, why do they feel that it is haunted? There are actually many accounts of paranormal activity in the house. And these range from hearing a little boy's giggle on the second floor to things actually being moved, like cutlery being moved or salt and pepper shakers being moved, like that kind of thing. The main floor ladies' washroom is also said to be haunted. Apparently, even since the 1980s, there have been reports of a woman standing behind you in the mirror, like in the reflection of the mirror when you're standing in that bathroom. I mean, I had my own little odd experience in the room while taking photos, so we'll get into that when we talk about the ghosts, but yeah. The parlor was actually featured on Creepy Canada in 2002 as well. They came to the house and got some videos and, talked to Gladys Pierce, who was still owning the dining parlor at that time. And she talked about her own personal experiences, as well as some of the workers talked about theirs. So back then, the activity included things like hearing footsteps around the house, especially upstairs. And that they were expecting is Minnie walking around the home. A chef working in the kitchen alone one day apparently also heard footsteps upstairs. And when they finally went to check out, what was causing the noise, they actually did see a woman upstairs. Again, thinking that it's Minnie. And apparently even customers have seen things beyond myself, because I also had a couple of experiences in the house. Very small ones, because we were only there for, I think, an hour. But still, apparently other customers have also seen a woman walking around in like the front parlor room. And this is kind of where I was talking about, when someone had passed away back then, they would tend to have the wakes in the house. And typically they would be done in the front parlor room. So I guess it's not super surprising that this is where people have actually seen a ghost of a woman walking around. So again, thinking that it's Minnie. And others have even claimed hearing the piano being played when no one was there. So you're getting a lot of these, typical paranormal activity of footsteps, of someone, walking by that actually isn't a real live person. You're getting the piano playing, the children giggling. That would just be creepy for me. I don't like when it's kids giggling, but, whatever. And same maybe with the person standing behind you in the reflection of the mirror. Like that is something you read in horror books or see in horror movies, not something you really want to have happen to you while you're having some lunch and need to go to the bathroom, right? Anyway, I don't know. I guess Minnie has been seen many times. But let's get into more of the ghosts, because there are more than one ghost that apparently have been seen in the building, as well as that are expected to kind of be part of the haunting. So let's talk about those ghosts. All right, the first one, in the attic. Apparently there was a ghost, and I say was because apparently they're no longer there, but there was a ghost by the name of Sydney. So Sydney had come through while there was a paranormal investigation going on with The Other Side, if you know that show, and to notify the current owner. But previously, he had been known by workers in the dining parlor that had been working there for a very long time. They knew of this young boy that apparently was haunting the attic, and sometime he would come to the second floor, but he would never come to the main floor because he was not allowed. So they're not 100% certain where Sydney came from. During a tour of the location, we were told about the fact that the attic was originally a maid's quarters. So they're wondering if this boy was maybe, a son of the maid at one time. Minnie was also really strict and against drinking of alcohol in the house. Like there was no alcohol allowed in the house. But when they went through the attic rooms and they were opened up, they actually found a bunch of bottles had been actually like hidden up there. So they actually wonder if the space was also used as kind of a secret drinking place for some of the residents as well, when Minnie wouldn't let them drink. But a medium was brought in to talk to this little boy. And apparently he was complaining about being sick, which kind of brings into question, could this have been someone that had passed during the Spanish flu, perhaps? Because the Spanish flu did go through Saskatchewan in 1918 through to, I think, 1920. And it hit Moose Jaw, kind of end of 1918. I don't know what the total deaths in Moose Jaw were. I didn't go search for any sort of names or anything, so I didn't go that far into it. I guess I could to see if we find a Sydney on it, but it was estimated that more than 5,000 people did die in Saskatchewan, like Saskatchewan as a whole, from the Spanish flu. So that was, and primarily in younger generations. So that was roughly 6% of the provincial population at that time. So I don't know, maybe. I guess I could dig into it and see if I find a Sydney on the list and we can go from there, but I'm not sure. But when the psychic, came to visit and, could speak directly with Sydney, he realized that the boy was sad and scared to move on, which would explain why he had been seen, looking out attic windows and looking through, the stair railings. His face has been seen looking through those and watching people going by. However, that same psychic is said to have talked to the little boy and convinced him to go find his mom in the afterlife. And apparently, ever since that psychic had that conversation with Sydney, the giggle of the little boy and his expected movements on the second floor and in the attic have no longer been heard in the house. So they think that he did move on. So if you go visit now, you're not going to see Sydney. Now, a more recent addition to the hauntings was of a worker in the dining parlor. So the ghost of Brenda is said to periodically visit the dining parlor, and she had worked in the building for 30 years and had battled cancer for the last 10 years of her life. Apparently, while she was alive, she was terrified of the ladies' washroom downstairs because of the reportings of someone standing behind you in the mirror. She didn't like that bathroom. And, just talking about it kind of brings goosebumps to my arms. But anyway, apparently while filming for The Other Side, it was actually in that exact bathroom that they feel they were able to connect with the spirit of Brenda. So, interesting. We were told Brenda was, afraid of the place, and that ends up being the place that she decides to come through during this paranormal investigation. But it is said she only pops in to visit now and then, which kind of makes me think of like Francis Stark and his periodic roaming around Regina buildings. Like it's just one of those ghosts that wants to come visit some of their favorite places once in a while, and then they go away. So it's not a constant haunting. And another recent addition to the hauntings is that of Andy. Again, Andy is one of those ghosts that just come around and visit periodically because apparently he has a favorite booth that he likes to sit in near the bar on the main floor. And apparently after he passed away, he has still been seen to be sitting there periodically. So there you go. You could potentially see someone just sitting by the bar and you wouldn't know that it was Andy. So I don't know. What is my take in this? After being there and actually visiting it and kind of having some of my own experiences, I do believe the place is haunted. Like 100%, I do believe in it, especially in the attic. Since I had a couple of my own experiences in the hour or two that I did spend there back in, I think it was 2022. So I did have an experience in the women's washroom as well, as I said, on the main floor. Now, I can't figure out for sure if it actually is paranormal, though. It might just be a weird capture on my camera. I'm not really sure. I did take lots of photos in the washroom, so I got lots of photos of the mirror. And it was in the mirror that I got this weird, I don't know, they're kind of like rope-like glares or rope-like bluish lights. I can't really explain them. They don't look like, a flash glare, but at the same time, maybe it was a weird smudge on the mirror that for some reason just didn't show up in my other pictures. I can't figure them out. Maybe I'll post them on my social media at some point and you guys can tell me what you think because I couldn't figure it out. Otherwise, I had two odd experiences up in the attic. Like I said, attic for sure is haunted. First, when I went up there, I stopped on the very top stair. I didn't go onto the landing of the attic. I stopped at the very top step and I turned around and was watching, for him to be following. So he had come with me that day to just do some videotaping while I was taking photos and asking questions, and I had a digital recorder with me. And so while I was up there and I was waiting for him, because he was taking forever on the second floor, taking video, I had turned around to watch the second floor landing below me. So my back was, to the landing at the top of the stairs. So before my husband came into view at the bottom, I heard what sounded like someone had taken a step or two away from me, like as if they were standing right behind me and they took a step back. Like the wood on the landing creaked really loud that even my little digital recorder that I was holding actually picked it up. And it just physically felt like, that feeling when someone's standing right behind you and then suddenly they back up. That's what it felt like. And I didn't even notice that I had the feeling to begin with. I just had chills go down the back of my neck again because I'm remembering this. But yeah, so that was my first experience up in the attic. Needless to say, I got kind of creeped out. I turned, looked around, and Finally, my husband came into view at the bottom of the stairs, and you can see in the video, I should probably post it somewhere. You can see me giving him like these wide eyes as he walks up the stairs because I just had that experience. And anyway, unfortunately, while him and I were both up there, I don't think we had any experiences. So we went back downstairs and we ordered food because we're like, well, we want to eat while we're here and give the food a try. We were staying in Moose Jaw anyway for a couple of nights, so we decided, sure, let's stay here for lunch. So the second time I went upstairs, I thought I captured absolutely nothing. I was like, you know what, while we're waiting for food, I'll run upstairs alone again and just see if something happens again. But I had taken my digital recorder upstairs with me, and I also took my phone with me so I could record video. What I didn't realize is that I actually did capture something on video. It happened so fast that I'm not surprised now that I missed it while I was there. But there is this weird like shadow thing that just moves really quickly across the view over one of the tables. You first see its reflection in a picture frame's glass, and then it just shoots across the table. I mean, like less than a second. And it blocks out the light glaring off the cutlery for just that like millisecond, and then it's gone. I'll maybe put the frames up on my social media or something if you want to check it out. I'm sad to say I missed it live, so because I would have thanked them for, whoever it was showing me something, because it just happened right after I said, hey, would you be willing to show yourself, to my camera? And yeah, anyway, I have goosebumps on my arms again just thinking back to it. It was a cool experience, and I wish I had realized it in the moment, but oh well. Anyway, those are my stories, as well as the stories I've been told by others about the haunting of the Hopkins Dining Parlour in Moose Jaw. I highly recommend you go check it out, go have some lunch, and maybe ask to tour the attic. Maybe you'll get a glimpse of the ghost of Minnie, Brenda, or even Andy. And if you do go, make sure you say hi from me, as I will definitely be going back. They have a capacity of 375 people too, so they can help you with catering and the like. I saw on their website they're even bringing back the medieval themed suppers, so there you go. Anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. Don't forget, if you'd like to support the show, you can find me on most social media platforms under KDKULPA. I also have a Patreon for those that want behind the scenes information, extra content, and a chance to join a live Q&A with me each month. Next week, we'll be jumping back into the history of paranormal to talk about, the objects that they use to try to communicate with the dead. Have you ever communicated with a long-lost loved one using a Ouija board? Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we'll uncover more secrets, unravel more mysteries, and delve deeper into the shadows. Until then, remember to keep your flashlight handy and digital recorders ready. This is Katie Kulpa, signing off. Until next time, my ghouls.